And there we go with the pop of the top. That's the pop in the top on the very first episode here of Two Guys and a Beer podcast. My name is Andy Beckstrom, joined as always, and I say as always because it's episode 1, so will be as always. My friend Shawn Field here for the podcast, trying to get things kicked off. So I'm glad you could join us. And the episode will talk about some randomness, I'm sure, kind of what's going on in the world and some sports stuff, and kind of dive into a few different things. But right off the top, we're going to heard the pop top on the sound of the beer opening, but podcast, Two Guys and a Beer. You know the names of the two guys. The Moosehead beer is what we're going to be having today. Moosehead Lagger will be our choice here. But before we get too deep down that trail, Shawn, could do kind of an introduction here. Tell us who we are and kind of what we're doing here, other than just talking to ourselves.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening that tunes in. We appreciate it. Do the like, subscribe, share on all the social media platforms for us to help us out there. We're just a couple old guys now. We've been buddies for over 20 years. Played a lot of rec sports ever since we were 18, 19. We played high school sports. I came up with this idea to do a podcast because, well, we're in our 40s now. We need a new hobby, and we can't play sports much longer. My back hurts, my knees hurts, your back hurts, your knees hurts. I mean, you're popping Advil, I'm putting Bengay on my knees. Mm-hmm. I'm eating bananas, drinking these RX Fit Aid drinks, all this goofy stuff, bare back and body. So not too long ago, I was like, I got to talk to Andy. We should start a podcast. We can't play sports much longer. We need a new hobby. So podcasting it is, and here we are for all of you.
A lot less medication involved, a lot less warming up for something like this.
Well, it's a different type of medication.
This is true.
It's beer medication.
This is true. As long as no matter what we do, we still come through loud and clear. So, well, it depends on how many moose heads we have. It might be less understandable later.
What do you think of the beer, though?
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It's I don't think that I've had it before. No, I don't believe so. It's definitely light. It's a lager. Fiercely independent product of Canada. Fiercely independent.
Yep, because it's still owned by the family that founded it.
Oh, there we go. There's a lot of breweries that are still owned by local, like the Leinenkugels is still owned by whatever iteration of Leinenkugel it is now, like Dick Leinenkugel, and I don't know. I think there's 6 of them now or something that own it. But they brew very little of their beer at their brewery.
Right, Miller brews it for Leinenkugel.
Exactly, yeah. Everything is at Miller Coors and their various locations and stuff. But yeah, I like it if they can keep everything in house. I mean, obviously there's a certain level of we don't have to put all the we created it and we'll just live off of that or whatever. But
yeah, it's owned by sixth generation Olands now. 2 sons still operate it, run it, manage it. Continuing forward. It's got quite the interesting history. So basically, this beer company was founded in 1867. That was 156 years ago.
Wow. So it's been around for a hot minute.
It's been around a long time. And actually, the country of Canada was founded in 1867.
So it's almost older than the country that it's in.
The same, yeah. So I thought that was interesting. It's the last major brewery in Canada that's still owned by Canadians. It's still independently owned by the family. So like a Labatt's or Molson or whatever, or big
something else?
Owned by other non-Canadians now.
I guess I didn't know that. I think maybe I thought that Molson was owned by whoever else, but I thought maybe like a Labatt's was still whatever.
I just looked this up myself. I thought road trip, since we can do spontaneous road trips, but it's a little far for a road trip.
It's not quite like randomly going to Chicago on a Saturday morning.
No, this is 1,600 miles away on the east coast of Canada in St. John, New Brunswick. So it's 1,600 miles from home from here. So when it started, actually it was a female that started brewing the beer first. Her name was Susanna Oland. And she started brewing beer in her backyard, and she shared it with her community that she lived in back then. And she was brewing an October brown ale. And it became popular.
Yeah.
And with her in her community in 1867. So she and her husband and her kids decided to start Turtle Grove Brewery. That's where it began.
Okay. So it wasn't even Moosehead originally. It was Turtle Grove.
Was the name of
was what it was called.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll take the Two Guys in a Beer private jet out there. Is what Is that part of the benefits package?
I hope so. I hope so.
So we'll do that in like 2064.
We'll get on and just go, like Elvis. I feel like I'm going to take my daughter to see snow, land, see snow, leave 5 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
You learn that at Graceland when you're there. He did that once.
Another thing I've not been to yet.
It's really cool.
That one's a little closer than 1,600 miles away, but
it is. It's about 12-hour drive, if I remember.
Sounds right.
In 1870, so 3 years after they started founding the brewery, Susanna's husband died unexpectedly. So she went around and got support from investors to keep the brewery going. And because she got investors, she was no longer the majority owner of it. And it was renamed to Army and Navy Brewery.
Army and Navy Brewery. Is there like a background for that from the Army Navy?
I couldn't find
really
any
enjoyed the game or something?
I couldn't find any information about it. I suppose
Interesting.
Maybe some of the investors were part of the Canadian Army or Navy. Because it was on the East Coast, like I said, on a pier, which you'll learn about what happened later.
Okay.
When I go through this. So in 1870, when the husband died, she needed investors to keep Turtle Grove Brewery going. It was renamed Army and Navy Brewery because she no longer held the majority interest in ownership. In 1877, Susanna used money from an inheritance that she received to repurchase controlling interest from the investors.
There you go.
Now the Oland family owned the brewery again. And then she renamed it S. Oland, Son and Company was the name, 1877.
Interesting.
Of the brewery.
I like it.
About a year later, then, the main building and several other buildings attached to the brewery were gutted by a fire.
Of course. That era.
Pretty devastated, yeah. And then she rebuilt a larger brewery on the same site. In 1885, she passed away, and then the brewery passed along to the second generation. Her youngest son in particular is the one that took it over. His name is George W.C.
George W.C.
No clue what W.C. means. That's just what I read.
Right. I think I had a pen pal when I was in like second grade that was W.C. He's from Texas. No idea. I only ever talked to him then, so I have no idea what it meant.
Yeah, no clue. 1895 rolls around. Prohibition era started. Caused a lot of problems with the brewery. So George sold it to a British syndicate who renamed it Halifax Brewing Ltd. George and his brother John ended up staying with the Halifax Brewing as managers. So they're still a part of it after they sold it to this British syndicate. Whoever that may be, I don't know.
Right.
Sounds mischievous.
It does. Anytime you throw syndicate in there, it definitely adds a...
Sounds like gangs and stuff to me.
Yeah.
1896, another fire leveled the buildings.
There you go.
Completely leveled.
It's a good thing that we got a good fire service now. We can smoke detectors and everything.
Right. It was rebuilt again. In 1809, there was a dispute over compensation. You know how I said George originally stayed on as a manager? Mm-hmm. He was mad about his compensation, so he ended the relationship with the British syndicate or gang member or whatever you want to call it. He took his money, he went and purchased Highland Spring Brewery in Halifax and renamed it Oland & Son Brewery. So now they're back to the family.
So they bought the same thing back. So they've bought the brewery back twice now.
Pretty much.
Okay. For those keeping track at home.
Right. Well, this is a different one. This one's Highland Spring Brewery. The other one was Halifax.
Oh, Halifax. Okay.
It was, Halifax Brewery Ltd. In 1917, on December 6th, this is the interesting thing. So this brewery, like I told you, was built on the East Coast, on the ocean, right on a pier, or next to a pier. So 1917, on December 6th, there was a French warship there. It collided with a Belgian relief vessel in the Halifax harbor. Both ships were on fire. They couldn't be controlled, so they steamed their way into the pier.
Pushed it.
While they were in the pier, the ships blew up.
Of course.
Killing 2,000 people, and it destroyed everything within 800 meters of the shore. Which was there?
The brewery. Yep.
So 6 people that actually worked at the brewery died in the explosion, and Savannah's son Conrad died in that explosion.
It's been quite the epic ride for, at what point do you just like, you know what? maybe we should go into like blacksmithing or something else. They'd say this is just not working.
It's not working for the Oland family.
Right.
Now, 1918 rolls around. George W.C. uses the insurance money, and apparently he received some sort of explosion compensation to fund the purchase of a new brewery that was called Red Ball Brewery in St. John. George sent his oldest son to run the Red Ball Brewery while he stayed back at the pier with his youngest son, Sidney, to rebuild what was destroyed in the explosion. So now they own a brewery inland, and they stayed back and rebuilt the one on the coast.
I like the explosion compensation, too. That's
I wonder who paid that out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I guess it makes sense if the two ships collide into the bit and whatever, but it's kind of like an explosion. That's not a phrase you hear real often.
In 1928 rolls around, the Oland business continues to grow, so they purchased another brewery. It was called the James Ready Brewery. And while searching old James Ready company records, George B. came across the name Moosehead. So that's where the name Moosehead first appears, is because they bought this other brewery and they were going through records.
Okay.
That inspired him to create the iconic Moosehead. It was originally a pale ale, not a lager. And in 1928, it was the first time both the logo and the name appeared on beer.
Okay.
It was 1928.
So it took a minute to get there, but and a lot of drama.
they got there. A few fires, a few explosions, deaths in the family. In 1937, George B.'s son, P.W.
It's all about initials.
Another initial there.
It's,
Apparently, he was going to brewing school all the way in the University of Birmingham in England. Well,
is that part of that syndicate as well? Is it?
It probably was. There was probably
that's how they get you.
So this was out in England. PW goes to school out there. He comes back. While he was out there, he discovered a taste for lagers and not ales. Well, of course, their family was only brewing ales and stuff. So in an act of rebellion, PW snuck his new recipe into production while his father was out of the country, creating the first Alpine lager, which is still a line they sell if you go on their website or go out to them. Okay. I haven't seen it for sale or in Minnesota or anything, but if you go to their website or Canada, they have Alpine lagers and stuff there.
We'll have to get that when we travel to go check it out.
That's right. We
live
go
and in
take our
person.
Tour. So that's kind of interesting. The reason lager exists is because he snuck it in when his dad was gone.
Tricked him into it.
1947, Moosehead Breweries is born. I guess the Moosehead logo was becoming extremely popular. So the owner, George B., was recognizing that, so he finally renamed the brewery Moosehead Breweries Limited. And that's kind of the first time the Moosehead Brewery name attached to the company. And then in the 70s, fifth-generation family owner Derek Oland, he led the development of a truly Canadian beer, the Moosehead Lager, with the green bottle that you see, the majestic moose icon on there, and they had the first tagline, "The moose is loose."
The moose is loose.
That
there
was
you
their
go.
advertising.
Love it. The moose is loose.
And in the 70s is the first time they sold beer internationally, and it came to the United States first. So Moosehead came to the United States. And then today, it's just sixth generation of Oland's brothers, Andrew and Patrick. They're the ones running the company, and they work there. Their main focus today is on innovation of new brands and the modernization of their facility.
Okay, I'm trying to update it for fire code.
Pretty much. So they don't burn out. Maybe put up some ballistics glass.
They don't have explosive insurance this time.
So that's kind of the facts anyways. So I guess it's not as many as it seems to be, but
that's still quite the history, especially it's almost a movie, the winding ways of how you get there. They had to buy it back once, buy a different one to, kind of like supplant into that spot and have it destroyed multiple times. Like I said, at what point do you just give up? This just isn't, it's a cursed project.
Yeah, they didn't want to give up with it. And it's a good thing too. And they have, Moosehead Light. They have a beer called Cracked Canoe, which it sounds like something I want to try. So when we take our road trip 1,600 miles to the East Coast,
that'll be the next one.
We're going to buy some Cracked Canoe.
There we go. I like it.
They do have a Moosehead small batch series, which they have. They have several breweries in Canada, but they have a smaller one where they do It's called the Small Batch Series, and it's like blueberry ginger, oatmeal brown ale, espresso stouts, like raspberry wheat ale, like those goofy or signature different flavors, you know.
Right.
And then they still brew the Alpine lagers.
Okay.
Like 2 flavors of that, and they do have a James Ready.
Okay.
Like 2 beers of James Ready beer since they bought that.
Right.
Keep it going.
They still do some ales, though? They got tricked into
They
the
still
lagers?
do ales, yeah.
Gotcha.
I can't find them around here.
Right.
All I have found in liquor stores and stuff around here is
Mostly just the...
just the green Moosehead Lagger, which is great beer. In fact, I told you before, you know, I rode around Lake Superior on my motorcycle this year. Well, most of the time we're in Canada, of course, and following Lake Superior. A lot of those places didn't even have Moosehead.
Oh, wow.
I was surprised. I asked for it. They're like, no, we don't have that. We have Labatt or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's dumb.
Right. Yeah.
A couple of them had it, you know, so I got it. But
Yeah.
so that's kind of that. And the whole reason I even got turned on to Moosehead beer is, you know, I'm building that bar in my basement. Well, I wanted a cool light.
Right.
Well, I didn't want Coors Light but like I want different,
Absolutely.
different shit in my bar, and I can only probably put up 3 or 4 lights. Otherwise, it'd be too jumbled, you know. So I was just flinging through eBay, and I wanted. You still have one hanging in your bar because, of course, I was looking for signs when you were in there.
Whatever's there is yours. Feel free to take whatever.
That Miller High Life one on the pole, you know, the ones that rotate.
Oh, yep.
I specifically wanted a rotating sign
Okay.
on my bar. Well, as I was flinging through eBay, guess what I came across?
A Moosehead.
Moosehead
Love it.
sign with their logo on one side and a green moose on the other side, and it's got a metal moose on the top. And I thought, that is freaking sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen one. I've barely even heard of the beer Moosehead. Like, that's what I want to get. So they're asking $800 for the sign, and I'm like, man, I guarantee you hardly anybody has that. So I understood the price. Well, I offered him $500, and he took it. Still ridiculous. I spent $500 on this sign, but it is freaking cool, man. And then when I got it, plugged it in, I'm like, man, this is sweet. Showing my wife. She's like, oh, yeah, cool, great, you know. I'm like, never had the beer before. I'm like, I better go try to find the beer and taste it.
Give her a shot, yeah.
So I found some, bought it, and I realized it's actually pretty good beer. So
Nice. An introduction to Moosehead Lagger, as told by Shawn Field. Love it.
Yep.
Trademark Union Made.
Union made, yep.
Huh.
Independent,
Good stuff.
family owned for 156 years.
Find it at most local retailers, or at least a handful of them, I'm sure.
It's crazy. They have a promotion going on right now that if you send them something you've built, they'll put your name on a can of beer and send it to you. I'm like, dude,
There you go.
sign me up.
Yeah.
So I'm all like filling out my stuff, my name, my address, email address, filling in the paragraph that they want you to. I'm like, built a podcast with my buddy. We're talking about beer, you know, all this stuff. Wouldn't let me click the submit button. I'm
Oh,
like, oh, okay. Scroll down, read the fine print. Canadian residents only. Like, really?
oh man. So we got to do the kind of the what is the lordship thing where we buy like a 3x3 plot of land in Canada. I am. I promise.
Yeah, right up there. Yeah. So I'm like, dang, how cool would that be? To get
Yeah,
a
no
can
doubt.
with your name on it. But
Maybe we'll have to try to meet some Canadians or something. Sometimes I meet them on cruises. If I go on a cruise, you know, Moosehead beer. What an introduction for episode number 1 of the Two Guys and a Beer podcast.
yeah, and it's good beer. It's hard to describe the beer because it's got like different tastes, like most Canadian beer. But it kind of walks that line between a bitter taste and a not bitter taste. You know, like for a lager, there's still flavor there, but it's not too much.
Right.
You know, like if you drink like a Miller Genuine Draft or a Coors or a Michelob Golden, those are lagers too, of course, but they don't. It's not a ton of beer taste there. You know,
Yeah,
they're
they're
kind
usually
of on the
pretty
border
light.
of like a light.
Yep. They're pretty
beer.
light, pretty thin.
Well, there's enough stuff in here that actually tastes like a beer. You know, there's got some
Yeah.
resemblance of flavor there, so I think that's why I like it.
And lagers have, always they're generally a lighter beer anyway, just because of the way that they're made. But they've kind of gotten that, I don't want to say a bad rap, but to your point, that you have the Coors Light and the Mick Gold and the Keystone Lights, they're all lagers. They're just because of it makes it that much lighter. And then you're trying to get a thin beer that you can sell case upon case for. And so I think lagers have kind of gotten that. It's a different process and almost more challenging process if you're brewing it itself because it's more temperature controlled. But people don't do a lot of them. And so that's all you ever see is those super light ones. So, yeah, you get something like this. People probably see, oh, it's a lager. Whatever. But if you actually try it, yeah, like you said, it actually has some flavor, has some depth to it, actually has something going on. So,
yeah, there's definitely something there. I did try to figure out the ingredients of it, but to no avail, of course. Apparently, they don't give out the ingredients to this beer.
Right. I'm sure somewhere, someplace, Brandon probably has access to that. He can probably do something.
Right. But I'm sure most places don't tell you their ingredients. Like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Nobody knows the recipe for their chicken. One of those
trying to think
sort of deals.
Which one it was. If it was, I think it might be Coca-Cola. Like they haven't patented the recipe because then they would have to write it down and give it to somebody.
Oh, wow.
Like it's kind of like if we write it down and give it to the government or something, somebody could access that, whether it be a clerk or something else. So they're like, nope, it's locked in a vault. And if you figure it out, go ahead, but you're not going to. I think it was Coca-Cola. It was somebody that like, it was one of those that, a very specific recipe, but they're like, if we patented, then it's out there.
And that's been around forever too. Coca-Cola, which is a great pop.
Absolutely. Especially when you get it at McDonald's, whatever it is.
Well, I know what it is actually because I researched that one point in time.
There you go.
So you want to know the reason why McDonald's Coke is better out than everywhere else?
It's not because they put cocaine in there. It's not
yet.
Not quite that.
That's
okay.
probably coming soon yet.
Right.
But it's because it's always cold. From manufacture to being brought to a McDonald's store, it's never warm.
Okay.
It's kept cold in a refrigerator the whole time. They use stainless steel tubs for it at McDonald's. Not every place uses stainless steel containers and stuff for it. So that's what they assume is why it tastes that way. 'Cause it's never warm. It's always cold, like Coors Light is brewed cold. Same thing with McDonald's Coca-Cola. So,
Interesting.
that's what I read anyways on the interweb. Everything on the interweb is so true.
Exactly. I mean, you're not allowed to post it if it's fake news. That's not, not something that's, it's not allowed. No, I did not know that, but that probably does make sense. I'm sure it's the little things like that do make, just a little bit of a difference,
Yeah.
So, interesting.
And probably not that much of a cost to the company either.
Right.
I mean, when you own your bar, pop costs you, 3 cents a cup?
Something like that. It's not a whole lot.
$2.50 a cup,
Right. So what else is going on in the world? Vikings are training camp start Thursday in a couple days, whatever day it is. I don't remember. But
yeah, it's got to be coming up. Like it was like a week ago. It said a week. Like I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to it.
Right.
I've been kind of working on my fantasy team, paying more attention to that than the Vikings. But
I need to set my keepers in my fantasy league. I was just talking to our league manager I play baseball with, and he's like, yeah, I'm running 3 different leagues and it's too much. I don't want to do it. But I'm like, yeah, I need to set my keeper because we're doing it's a lot of our teammates. So a keepers league over the couple of years, you can save like 3 players or something like that. Sure. So at some point I need to go in there and actually figure that out. The first year it was kind of wild and funny. It was as soon as we decided it was going to be a keeper league and we were going to have year after year the same people, almost immediately people are like, all right, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2 first rounders next year and a 3rd rounder for whatever. And it's like, whoa. I get it. But by the 3rd year, those 3rd rounders are going to be like backup quarterbacks because the keepers are going to stay with certain, like the draft depth changes a lot with a keeper league because there's less high-end talent that's there. It becomes almost more waiver wire, that type of stuff.
Unless you're trying to rebuild a squad, draft picks do nothing for you.
Yeah.
I'm in a dynasty league, so we keep the whole team year over year. And then draft picks do a little more for you because you have a rookie draft. Mm-hmm. Well, you're only drafting rookies, so it's trading my next year's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round for Justin Jefferson.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody accept that trade, but that's kind of the stuff that goes on a little bit more.
I suppose, that would make sense.
Yeah, so it's been kind of fun doing that. I haven't played fantasy football for a few years since I ended my league a few years ago that I ran.
The one that I won in like 2007 or something?
Yeah, probably.
I think I still have the T-shirt somewhere.
Yeah, you probably do.
I would wear that around Jeff for sure.
Yeah, I shut that down a few years ago and just wasn't fun anymore. And when you play fantasy football, watching football isn't as fun because you're too focused on the ticker on the bottom of the screen, or you're constantly on your phone, thumbing your phone, but not paying attention to the game. But I got into it, was asked to do Dynasty last year. I'm like, I guess I'll play. And
right
now I'm kind of into it, and I easily had the best team last year, and fashionably I got blown out in the first round of the playoffs.
There you go.
Half of my starters scored 6 points or less.
What was your team named? The Vikings?
Flying Moose Cocks.
There you go.
Like usual.
Yep.
So that really ticked me off. I'm like, really? I was 13-3. Or 13-2 is what it was. Only lost twice all year. I scored the most points in the league by like over 400 points. First round of playoffs come, I lay an egg, and half of my starters score 6 points or less.
Oh.
I'm like, this is some bullshit. Man.
Right.
I was so pissed.
Absolutely.
I was so mad. So I almost wasn't even going to play this year. I'm like, I just want to watch football and not play fantasy. But I'm like, well, I better at least run it back, since I had such a good team. And I don't know if my team is going to be as good this year. I got pretty lucky with some running backs, picking them up on the waiver wires and using them for 2 weeks and then dumping them and picking up somebody else. But we'll see what happens, I guess. A couple of the people I dropped this year were picked up by other people. So I was picking up rookies and stuff, trying to plan for the future if I continue to play. My biggest draft pick was that Kincaid, the tight end from Buffalo.
Okay.
Rookie.
Yep.
He's supposed to be like the next Kelsey. So we'll see.
Yeah, he's got a good young quarterback working with him too. So
Diggs and could have a decent running game. We'll see how Cook does over there. Not Dalvin Cook, his brother.
Right.
There,
James Cook.
James Cook
Sounds right.
Yeah, because they dumped
sounds like
Singletary.
a pirate name, really, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But
So they dumped Singletary. He signed with Houston. He was on my bench. Well, I dumped him since he screwed me last year. I was sick of that. Like, bye.
Yeah. Well, as long as we're kind of on that subject to a certain extent, maybe get back into fantasy a little bit more later. But from the grand scheme of thoughts from Saturn here, the running back controversy, they're just not getting paid and things like that and whatnot. What is your kind of just general take on either just the state of it or what do they do? I have some ideas or some thoughts, but it's a tough spot to be,
I find it kind of hilarious, honestly. Like I almost feel bad for them because they're pro athletes and they make so much money. I don't feel bad for them. Generally, I feel like athletes are way overpaid nowadays, but I don't really know what they should do. Football's a different game. You don't hand the ball off to your running back 30 times a game. If you have got a starting running back and they get 12 rushing attempts a game, 15 attempts, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
So they're really not that vital to the game anymore. They're more vital as a pass catching running back out of the backfield.
Absolutely.
It's a passing league. It's no longer a running league. So I kind of think they should quit whining and take a step back and look at how different the game is.
Right.
But on the same token, kind of in defense of them, they get beat up to fuck.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't have a long shelf life. Like they're 6-7 years and they're starting to become less effective, so.
And a high-end running back can still affect the game. It can still be like a vital part. You look at like a Christian McCaffrey kind of person, but he's, like you're saying, out of the backfield, catching a little bit more, being able to run. That was even Dalvin Cook, last couple of years, like that was where he got some of his big plays, was just screen pass, something out on the edge, like make a move. But yeah, I kind of agree with that sentiment. My kind of thought is they almost kind of need to just step back and reset their own market in a way. Everybody's so worried about like the high end backs and they're not going to get paid but they almost have to understand where they're at and what's happening. Like it is what it is. Go ahead and sign your massive contract for your second deal, but you're only going to play 2 of those 4 years at best. And then that's fine. Take that money, get it, whatever you can guaranteed, but then go play for another team. You know what I mean? Guys that are like holding out and still trying to get, get all that you can. Don't get me wrong. Get all that you can because the money is out there somewhere. But like you said, it's a quarterback league. It's a receiving league. It's a passing league. There's a reason that, in a way, guards are making some that I read recently that the franchise tag for a guard is more than a franchise tag for a running back. And for whatever reason, I mean, obviously the cost of it, but the franchise tag amount for a running back has actually gone down over the last year or two, which is insane to me, but it's crazy. Still, it just says there's just not as much of a drop off. You know what I mean? A great running back can still affect the game, but it's not like if you lose one. I mean, how many times have we seen it for different teams that they lose one and they bring in their, fifth round rookie and maybe he doesn't get 110 yards a game. Maybe he only gets to like 107 and catches 3 touchdowns or something. They're still having an impact. They're still being used, but I don't want to say running backs are a dime a dozen, but you can find another running back, and especially with veterans, you can find a decent running back. They may have a little bit more tread and may not quite be as explosive, but again, you're not using that part of the game as much.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. There's not a lot of high-level running backs in the NFL anymore, which makes it more interesting is why isn't the Brandon Jacobs getting paid? Mm-hmm. He's a top 3 running back. He is a massive deal. Saquon Barkley. Why isn't he getting paid? You think those top couple would? Yeah. They're not even getting nothing. They're getting the squat.
Exactly.
But, the game has changed, like you said, and you use 2, 3, 4 running backs a game out of the backfield to do different things. Mm-hmm. It's just not a pound and run up the middle deal anymore. It's all about passing, Like the guard's still not losing value. Well, because it's a passing league, quarterbacks are the most expensive piece you pay for, so you got to protect them more than you protect a running back. And
yep.
This is, I don't know, man. It's just nuts. It's different.
Yeah, and it's tough too because even if you're a young kid, you're not even a young kid, I guess maybe young to us, but if you're 17, 18, 19 years old, getting out of high school, going to college, it's well, I almost got to fight for, if I'm an elite level college running back, fight for that right to be able to leave after 1 year. Right now, you have to be 2 years, and rightfully so, because they just physically, they're not built up enough to be, you get pounded in the NFL. But for a certain amount, that position is, if you spend another year as a Division I running back, you're almost taking NFL type hits. That's another year off of your career in a way. Like you're saying, they get beat up, and now you get to the NFL, and if you're drafted in the first round, now you got the 5th year option, and so now you're 6 or 7 years sort of with the Division I into your career of a 10-year back. Right. The shelf life, like you said, it's just not there, and I could pay them or I could just draft another guy in the 3rd round. You know what I mean? Because every year there's 20 running backs that come out. So so it makes it tough on the position because there's just so many people that want to do it. But do you think that I guess maybe I'll ask this question because there's so many that do it. Do you think that there will be this massive change where running backs want to be more out of the backfield, more receiving oriented? Or do you think that we're going to see maybe a trend where kids that are younger, everybody wanted to be Barry Sanders. Everybody wanted to be Emmitt Smith, name whatever running back. You know what I mean? Everybody wanted the ball. Because that's what you did in high school. Nobody really throws the ball unless you're in Texas or California or something. But everybody wanted that position. Do you think that now there's going to be maybe more people that well, if this is my long-term goal, there's no money at the end of that rainbow or a short career, there's going to just be less running backs. You know what I mean? Do you think that that pool, because right now it's a pretty deep pool of capable running backs. Do you think that just less people will want to do it?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll be about the same as it always was. Because the position of running back is getting touches. The ball gets put into your hands. You're not worried about somebody else putting the ball in your hands. Like a quarterback throws it to receivers, tight ends, or running backs. All 3 of those positions vie for touches of the ball. Running backs don't really have to do that. Once they get the ball is theirs. More opportunity to touch the ball as a running back still. Mm-hmm. Because if you do get 10, 12 rushes a game, you're still running out of the backfield getting 4 to 6 attempts, receiving attempts, passes thrown at you. So
you're close to 20 touches a game out of the 60.
Yeah, I don't think it'll go down. Yeah, no, I don't think it'll go down much at all as far as that goes anyways. I don't know. It's something to think about, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it was more just spitballing. I don't necessarily think that the running back position is going to die or anything like that, because even just at a greater scale on the high school and college level, maybe less so college level, but especially the high school level, there's just not that many guys that can play the quarterback position at a high level, and so you're always going to have a plethora of running backs because that's just what you can do. You know what I mean? Everybody can run the ball. Everybody runs the ball. Of course, more often than not, you watch a high school game, your best running back is your quarterback because they just take the shotgun snap and drag handoff and take off,
Yeah, I think if anything, it would change at the position would be they would just hone in more on their receiving skills, probably a little bit more, and probably even their blocking skills. That wasn't never a big thing 20 years ago because their job wasn't to block. It was just to pound, run up the middle, So that might change a little bit. They'd probably be more worried about different skill sets at the same position. Probably.
Yeah.
Would be my assumption. Did you see what Andy Reid said this week about Jerick McKinnon? He's been in the league for 7 years. Like 4 for Minnesota, I think 2 for San Francisco, and 2 for Kansas City. Maybe 8 years in the league.
Yeah, handful there. I think he had some injury years.
He said he was a dinosaur.
I mean, kind of. He's not, but
he's been around with 7, 8 years, but he's barely been used.
Right.
Like all he has been is catching the ball out of the backfield. He's never started an entire season.
Even here he was behind Adrian and then played. I don't know if did he cross over with Dalvin. I'm trying to remember what year he left.
No, he left, and then I think we drafted Dalvin Cook. That year. And then he was supposed to start in San Francisco. He's supposed to be their main back, and then he got hurt. Week 1 for half of the year. So I thought, how the heck is this guy a dinosaur?
Right.
He's got probably a handful of years left, 4 or 5 years. Even in Kansas City, all he does is catch the ball out of the backfield.
Which is, I mean, you can make a whole career out of, if you have that ability, because there's running backs. I think that, to your point, I think that's probably exactly right. What will happen is more focus on that out of the backfield, because it's almost like a left-handed reliever. If you can catch the ball out of the backfield, you're going to have a lot longer career than guys that are just Adrian Peterson ground and pound, just because they become dinosaurs rapidly. They don't have that burst step, and teams aren't running the ball. And so if you're running the ball 12 times and you get 24 yards, it's a 2-yard carry, 2-yard average, but that's not explosive. You're not getting the big plays out of that. So, but yeah, left-handed relievers. My God, I wouldn't pay anything, but the amount of money that I'd pay to just be, be left-handed and throw just like a 78-mile-an-hour curveball or something.
Speaking of pitchers, now you're talking about that. So Joe Mauer just got entered into the Twins Hall of Fame. He's like the 38th Twins member.
Oh yeah, whatever it
to
is.
Get inducted into the Twins Hall of Fame. Whatever the number is, it's in the 30s. I don't remember exactly. But they just so happened, the guy that struck him out this one and only time in high school, pitcher, walked up to the mound. They just had a surprise for Joe.
That's awesome.
I was reading the article about it, and I guess Joe recognized him right away, and he was coming up there, and he leaned into his ear and asked him if he still could throw that nasty curve, because that's what he struck him out on. It was a curveball.
Oh, that's awesome.
He said it started out at the belt and would drop right to his shoes as it crossed the plate. It's one and only strikeout in high school.
Right. Yeah, I remember hearing stories about that. Like, he'd come back to the dugout and he didn't even realize it. He's like, "Oh, I've struck out before." And they're like, "No, you really haven't." Like, all of his teammates were like, "Are you okay? Like, what's happening right now?" So,
that was interesting.
I mean, it's always fun when you bring something kind of not really random, but I guess somewhat random, a blast from the past, like something like that back in there. Could have brought somebody from like the Florida State football squad there. Be like, "You ready to fulfill your full ride scholarship now as a quarterback?"
Chris Winkie,
exactly,
28 years old.
Hey, he still had a pretty decent NFL career out of that. It was nuts, but
he did all right. Not too often you get people that old in college sports that make it to a professional. Well, Dean Garrett.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not a lot of them, but
he was 30 as a rookie in the NBA for the Timberwolves or something.
Yeah. Dean Garrett. Nuts. Yeah. He was pretty solid.
Yeah, he wasn't
amazing, but he was just a solid guy.
Played the position all right.
Mm-hmm. Some of those guys from that team, like, who was the other guy? Was it Tom Hammond? He was kind of more of a beefy guy in the middle. Like, he wasn't thick, but he was more like built like a linebacker.
Tom Hammond,
It's like 6'2", but he could run you over.
I think he played for Denver or something prior to the Timberwolves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he came here, he was a wily old veteran at that point.
Oh, yeah.
That's all we ever get is the people in the last 2 years of their career,
Yeah, reclamation project. We're going to bring him back.
Come play at Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's why Dallas Keuchel's here now. Give him a shot. He pitched well the other day, though.
Well, did you see what he did in the minor league? It was like a 1.3 ERA, like 7 wins, striking out people left and right, and then he pitched himself into a bunch of jams, but he pitched himself out of the jams, and we won the game.
Which is key.
That was nice. When he opted out of the contract, when he was pitching so good, I'm like, why aren't the Twins calling this guy up? Mm-hmm. at least throw him in the bullpen or something.
Give him an opportunity.
Wouldn't do it. And then he opted out.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, deuces, I'm out of here. But then he's like, no, I'll still play for the Twins, of course. And then they called him up and put him in and started.
Right. Which, I mean, to a certain extent, I guess in his position, if you have 5, 6, 7 starts or whatever with that, that 1 point low ERA like that, in AAA, you've now built yourself a little bit of a resume of, I can still pitch at this level. So you kind of bet on yourself in a way, like, oh, I'm going to opt out. I'll still play for you, but I also want to play for one of the other teams that are out here too. You know what I mean? Somebody's looking for a starter somewhere. So yeah. I'm just looking to get to that level. And the Twins were like, well, Joe Ryan must have something wrong with him. So
there's a lot wrong with him. But when you pitch that good in the minors, like, why aren't you calling him up?
Right.
A 1.3 ERA.
Yeah.
6 wins. Like
at some point in time,
you need to call him up.
Exactly.
And play.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why they weren't calling him up. It was just weird. Like, what are they doing? I don't know. The Twins piss me off.
Get you fired up.
Minnesota sports, man. Like, we're stuck in this flyover state. I feel wrong if I don't be a homer and root for all these teams,
right.
But I'm sick of rooting for all of them.
Absolutely.
It's so terrible, man.
And it's hard to get up for about anything. Like the Wild are strapped to the 2 contracts that, I mean, they had to do what they had to do. Don't get me wrong. Right. I agree with the decision, and the fact that they were able to win in as many games as they did last year was unreal to me with what they were working with. But it's going to be another 2 seasons of, well, we're working with, we're basically short 2 elite level players just because of the money. And it's just, that's the fact of what's going on. And, it sucks, but it's, how do you get excited for that, knowing that it's going to be, it's like when I was talking to my buddy Jason earlier today, we were talking about concerts or whatever. And he's like, oh, you getting a hotel? Cause I bought Metallica tickets.
Oh, I did too.
And it's
went on sale.
Yeah, it's like a Friday, Sunday bit. Well, exactly. He's like, you get in a hotel, and I'm like, well, I mean, maybe, but it's next year. And he's like, oh, so it's not next week. So it's kind of like getting excited for like years down the road. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. It's tough to do that. I'm still excited for the Wild. I love hockey. It's just absolutely one of my favorite sports. But it still is like something like that is like you just basically screwed. The Vikings going into this year are like, well, they had the worst defense in forever last year, and it's like, yeah, they got a new coordinator and they can do some stuff, but it's a little bit of turnover.
It can only get better though. It can't get much worse than last year.
Yeah, exactly. There's a certain part of me that you could absolutely convince me that they're going to be like 8 and 9. I don't think they'll be much worse than that. I think that they'll still be pretty decent, pretty good. If nothing else, the offense will carry them through to a 500 record,
just like last year. Yeah.
But you could make a fairly lucid, maybe drunk, but fairly lucid argument that they could be, I don't know about a Super Bowl contender, but like a legit contender. Because you do have Cousins in the second year of the same system, which he's
for the first time ever.
Yeah, he's really never had that. You have some stability around the entire offensive line is back. So you got the stability there. The receiving core, really all you're changing is the running back. And Madison's been there. He just wasn't the starter. So he's just going to get more touches. You're not changing really much of anything. You have a ton of explosiveness there, and now another year with that same system. And if for whatever reason the defense gets from 32nd to like 20th, I know that's a monumental leap, but it's still not, it's still bottom half of the league. I'm not saying they're going to jump to be like a top 5 defense, but if you get something out of them, like
that's still pretty significant.
Now all of a sudden you have this offense that's absolutely just tearing the league apart last year that now this year could just destroy folk, and a halfway legitimate defense. Again, I'm not trying to say they're going to the Super Bowl. I'm not booking my tickets to Vegas. I'm not doing anything like that. But you could make a
Why are you booking your tickets to Vegas? You go there regardless.
Yeah, I was going to say I might, but it might not be Vikings related. I'll go there for the Super Bowl, but it will not involve them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could I could see a legit argument that there are the pieces in place. There is the chance, that things could progress on that. It's the defense is really going to be the kind of the X factor. Like they're not going to, like I said, they're not going to jump up to be a top 5 defense. I don't think they got the pieces to be able to do that. I don't think that they have the defensive line to be able to do that. That's kind of in my mind where it kind of starts and stops. But if they do jump from 32 to 22, I mean, that's 10 spots, but that's
pretty significant. That's enough to beat the Giants in the playoffs last year.
Instead of giving up 30 points a game, now you're giving 25 points a game or something like that. But if we average 28 points a game scoring, now you're winning a bunch of those and you're not nail biter games at the end. That's, I think, more so you just want to be competitive. You want to be in a game and give yourself a fighting chance. And I don't think we did that a whole lot last year.
No, not really.
Which is weird to say that as a 13-3 team.
We had a lot of things go our way last year. A lot of things went right for a Minnesota team that you just don't typically see. The fumble at Buffalo, the largest comeback in NFL history against the Colts, like just things that don't happen for Minnesota teams. Usually we're on the receiving end of those things in the history books,
Exactly. When, who was it? The backup quarterback just tears right down the field and then throws an interception in the end zone. To Patrick Peterson. I don't remember who it was off the top of my head now, but just like something like that. Usually that ball's caught and it's a touchdown and we lose to like Carolina or something dumb, So
going back to hockey, who else likes hockey?
Who else likes hockey?
The Canadians.
Canadians love hockey.
You know what else Canadians like?
Beer.
Moosehead beer.
Moosehead beer. Brought it full circle.
That's all I got with that. But hey, I was going to switch things on here for a minute. This popped into my head a while ago. Kind of political, kind of not. Kind of about saving the environment and going green. While I was reading this, I'm kind of into politics and world events, and I try to avoid it because all it does is piss everybody off. I don't care what you are or where you're from. It's no good.
This is where Facebook and Twitter can get involved in our
it's ridiculous. But I would imagine you didn't notice what New York had just passed last week in their state government, New York. So they're all pretty left. They're about saving the environment, things like that. Well, now, if you go to a restaurant or if you go through a drive-thru, they're not allowed to give you napkins, silverware, ketchup packets, mayo packets, or any of that stuff. Can you believe that?
I mean,
does that make any sense? You're going to go through McDonald's, and they're not going to throw 2 ketchup packets into your bag in an effort to save the planet.
And I get the idea of not just tossing everything in there from the get-go. You know what I mean? But from that point, like if I go to like Hardee's in Malacca, they'll ask me, "Do you want some ketchup packets?" I'm like, "No, I'm fine. Yeah, I don't need any." And so they don't put it in there. So it's not wasting anything, but at least I have the option. But if they're saying that they can't at all, especially like, because I don't need ketchup. I don't usually use it for my fries.
I don't. Ketchup's so full of sugar, and I'm getting fat, so I don't like ketchup much either.
Exactly. I drink enough beer to be able to make up for the ketchup.
Moosehead beer.
There we go. I want some napkins. I don't need the 73 of them that Taco Bell will sometimes give me, although I need the 73 sometimes.
Yeah, they don't know how to wrap tacos too well.
Exactly. But at the same time, like I don't necessarily need that many, but like throw like 2 in there. I mean, I got the glorious handlebars here, so like I get some stuff, believe it or not, right in there and eating half of it. But I need a couple of napkins in there to be able to keep that kind of clean. In New York?
0.
I get shirt sleeve.
You know how you get them? You have to request them. Mm-hmm. Okay, understandable, but how does that make any sense in anybody's world?
Right.
Like, I just don't get it. So the wife and I went to Punta Cana a couple months ago. Cool place. Anybody listening out there, if you ever get a chance to go to Punta Cana. They're the friendliest people in the world. They're the happiest people in the world. Dominicans are awesome.
I was going to say, that's Dominican?
Yeah, great food, cool place, awesome place to go. They don't have plastic straws. Do you have any idea? Have you ever used a paper straw?
I have.
It is the stupidest
cruise lines,
thing.
Cruise lines almost won't. They won't give you a plastic straw anymore.
It is the
it's all about saving the turtles.
Ever.
They get in their nose.
Yeah, the turtles are fine.
But I'm fine not getting a plastic straw, but the paper straws are not because you leave it in a drink for more than like 3 minutes, and now it's you're drinking the straw,
over and you can't use it.
Yeah, you're drinking the straw. It's all just falling apart. I don't know what the answer is because you got to find something cardboard or something like that.
Don't
that's
give me
still
a straw,
like whatever.
Then. I'll just drink it. I don't usually use the lids and straws when I go out to eat, anyways. Just leave the thing away, but don't give me a paper straw. Like literally, we were getting so frustrated. They would shove this thing in our drink and 2 minutes later, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. Like, this is going to cause more trash out and about because people are going to be flinging them everywhere than a plastic straw. So that got me thinking about the Punta Cana trip when I read that article in New York, all in the effort to save the planet. Like, I don't understand. Like, the planet is fine. All this stuff is made from things from the planet. The planet has been through hurricanes, volcanoes, icebergs, dinosaurs, meteors, tectonic plate shifts.
The planet's trying to kill us anyway, so it's fine.
You know, magnetic poles changing. The planet is fine. If the planet doesn't want us here, the planet will shake us off and we'll all go flying. Like the planet will still be here. It's been here for billions of years. Plastic bags, ketchup packets, plastic straws are not destroy the planet. Mm-hmm. Now I say that, but I think everybody should be a good steward of the planet. I don't think we should just be chucking plastic bags everywhere and straws and ketchup packets and stuff. Like, be responsible with garbage.
There
Put
needs
it
to be
in a
a way
trash can.
Yeah, dispose of it properly.
Try to recycle, but this reading these articles just made me think like we're gonna save the planet. No, we're not. The planet will be just fine. All this crap is derived from the planet in the first place. So yeah, I just chapped my butthole when I read that. I mean, you gotta be kidding me.
It almost reminds me of, was it Minneapolis? I think it was Minneapolis passed a thing where there was, how did they word it? You couldn't, I think you could maybe use like an existing building, but if you were building a new building, you could not add a drive-through to it.
Right, yep.
Because of
curb emissions.
Yeah, greenhouse gas and stuff like that or whatever. Which, to a certain extent, I get what you're trying to say, but people that are going to do that are going to order on the app, park in the parking lot, leave the car running, and go inside and wait. It's Minnesota. It's cold AF. Maybe some people will, but more often than not, especially, I mean, Minneapolis is its own different part of the world, but especially anywhere else in the rest of Minnesota, like you go into any parking lot in the winter, January, you go to Walgreens, 37 cars in the parking lot just sitting there running.
Yeah. Like this stuff is just, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you got to do it on like a different level or something, whatever it is.
It almost seems like it's, I don't know. They're trying to do too much stuff that just simply doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. And maybe it's an effort to try to eventually make the grand sweeping changes. And like, well, if we kind of nickel and dime it to here and there, people won't notice that we completely wipe everything off or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the, I don't play at that level. I play just small town ball.
Yeah, what's interesting, this whole Ukraine war, Russia, all this stuff over there. I don't know if you watched the news a couple months ago, but the pipeline got blew up, Nord Stream pipeline underground. It was Russia's pipeline to Germany and France to supply natural gas. Well, all the evidence suggests the United States are the ones that blew it up. Well, that released more gas in the air than all the pollution in the world combined in 5 years. Nobody cares about that.
Right.
But we're caring about ketchup packets.
But do you know how much
straws.
Do you know how much cows fart?
A lot. That's why they want to regulate cow farts and put filters on their butts, like AOC and
that's
California people.
That's what's happening.
It's just crazy. Like, I don't know. How have we gotten so far goofy with some of this stuff? Like the far left is getting goofy. The far right, they're a bunch of goofy tards too. Like there's no common sense of anything of any kind. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's everybody's got a microphone, and everybody, oddly enough, we have microphones too.
We do.
But everybody's got a microphone, so everybody's got to make their presence felt. And sometimes it's not only that, but the more edgy or the more controversial or whatever, the more clicks or the more attention that it'll get. And so you got to be that extra level, that next level as long as you can.
Pretty much like that. What was her name? Greta Thunberg or whatever.
Oh, yep.
13-year-old trying to tell world governments that we're polluting too much. And they built a statue of her.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What I find interesting about all that, though, the Paris Accords and all that stuff is geared towards the United States scaling back on coal plants, nuclear plants, and going wind and solar and all this stuff. None of the other countries have to. Mm. China currently produces more coal and everything in the atmosphere than we do. Mm-hmm. How come they don't have to scale back? Why is it the United States that has to? It's only our country that seems to have to do that.
Right.
And we have to pay for it and pay for other countries. Like, how does this make any sense?
It's because we have we have all the money. We're not in debt to anybody. We're not, that's.
It is goofy. It's just mind blowing sometimes. Anyway, that's my rant about that. I read that about New York. I'm like, oh, okay, no ketchup packets, no silverware, no napkins, unless I ask.
Right.
Okay. Like, I kind of agree with you. They should at least offer. Like you said, do you want ketchup? Oh, no, I don't. Then just leave it.
Yep.
They shouldn't just throw it all in there. But
yeah, at least have that.
Except for napkins. They should throw napkins in there automatically. Everybody needs napkins.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because a napkin is such a small amount of paper and such a small amount of waste that probably biodegrades quicker than the wrapper that the burger's coming in. Like I don't know, especially some of the napkins that you get from some restaurants for sure. So, well, I've reached the end of my Moosehead.
Yeah, I'm
just about there. There we are. Any further thoughts on the afternoon, the evening now, I suppose?
No, I'm about ready to crack another beer though once this one's gone.
There we go. I think that might put a wrap then on episode 1 then of the Two Guys and a Beer podcast, found on all major podcast platforms. You can also follow all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. What's the little green one?
That's Rumble.
Rumble.
Yeah.
Rumble.
So that's, if you don't know what Rumble is, that's the alternative to YouTube. Since YouTube censors stuff, there's Rumble.
Okay. The uncensored.
Uncensored.
What could go wrong
like
there?
Twitter's supposed to be uncensored now that Musk owns it.
X.
X. Yeah. So that's what Rumble. That green thing is Rumble.
I was not familiar with that. So that you learn something every day. And I didn't just learn about just Moosehead. I learned now about Rumble as well. So now I'm everywhere.
Everybody likes to learn about Moosehead.
Yeah, that was a kind of a great background on Moosehead. So yeah, the proverbial like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your kids, tell your parents, tell your neighbors. Yeah, tell everybody.
Tell everybody. And they don't even have to listen.
Exactly.
We prefer they would listen, but just get our numbers up there. Just click.
Just click on it.
Share.
Yeah.
The more numbers we get, the better the algorithms become on social media to push it a little more. So.
Yeah. If you're going running, go ahead and put the podcast on for a little bit before you change to the next one, then we at least get to click.
Right, at least a 3-second play.
Exactly.
That is a stat, a 3-second play.
Just give us that, put it on in the background when you're doing dishes or doing laundry or something and mowing the lawn, whatever it is. The lawnmower, you won't even be able to hear us. That's probably better anyway. Right. So, all right. Yeah. So for Shawn Field, I'm Andy Beckstrom. And until next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, and God bless you all.